Hmm. Sorry, I try to load that. Anyway, what's going on, everyone? It's Alex here with the Flunky Entrepreneurs Field Guide. And today's field report is going to be brought to you by yours truly. That's right. Today's video is sponsored by eFlunky, or the eFlunky. Now, first things first, let's get all and this video is pretty much going to be about, the process in the stage that I'm at right now in terms of um, trying to research how I could get more exposure. And when I was doing so, I actually discovered something, which was, I guess there's a big controversy going on now about Snapchat and what's going on and how is it going to survive in this, in this new day and age of, social media marketing. Because let's be honest, at the end of the day, you don't have to be a big company with a big marketing budget in order to be able to, access all the people or the demographics or whatever it is that you want to access, for your company or even for your brand. And when I say your brand, I mean you don't necessarily have to be registered as a company or even identify as a corporation or limited liability or anything like that. It doesn't have excuse me, it doesn't have to be so stringent. You don't have to really label yourself in order as a company in order to to market yourself or brand yourself. And that's kind of the process that I'm going through, because when I first started the process, I thought it was all about the branding. It was all about marketing yourself as a company, marketing yourself as a corporation or a limited liability or whatever it was, copywriting and trademarking and doing all this fun stuff that really wasn't so fun. It took a lot of energy out of the process, like the creative process. Myself now in a position now of rediscovery to try to figure out what's going to be the most valuable thing. And I realized that just branding myself, just branding who I am, branding my character, branding my when I say branding, I mean being consistent with one motive, one motivation, right? My MO is, as eFlunky, I want to be able to be of service to you guys, to my watchers, to my people who are also on the same mission as I am. And I kind of want to be able to give you a heads up, because when I was first starting out, man, there was a lot of complicated scenarios and ideas and concepts of doing business and stuff that I didn't really understand. And the reason why is because it's very different when you're like, when you put it this way, when you're looking for information, a lot of the information is written by professionals in the industry. They're written by a lot of this information is kind of gathered by people who have worked in corporations and in big companies and stuff. And right now I'm not pursuing that, right? That's not my pursuit. As an entrepreneur, I want to make my own way. I want to make my own money, and the only way to do so is to get creative and get resourceful, right? So my mission is to try to figure out how I can gain subscribers, how I can gain, more exposure from my brand. And, I'm looking into that. There's plenty of resources on YouTube. There's plenty of resources, online in general, whether you're doing a Google search or Yahoo or MSN, whatever you want to use, or Safari, whatever you want, whatever you're using. Just look it up, start browsing, start looking up for things that have to do with your niche and how it is that you could like, say for instance, for me, if I'm looking to be more of a, how can I say, if I'm looking for more exposure, as far as my brand, which is eFlunky, which is what I identify with, right? Now that brand has certain qualities attributed to it, and it all starts with a very basic process. When I say basic, again, this comes from the corporate world, where it's like it's all about business models, it's all about business strategy and planning and all this and that. So it really does start with something so business, with something so business as a business plan. right? And no, it starts with a business plan. It starts with, a plan of action, and that's really all it comes down to. A business plan is nothing more than a plan of action. Now you can differentiate, during the periods of growth that you want to achieve. You can really, try to depict how far along do you want to get, how much money do you want to make, how much do you want to learn, how much, and you really write that down, and it's nothing more than a personal journal. Start there. It doesn't have to be this stringent, structural, very rigid, formulaic looking. I've been there. I've done that. I have even first report when it came down to my marketing class and coming up with a business plan and all that stuff. When I was in school for business, and it wasn't the same once I left school, and started my own business. It wasn't the same at all. There was I had to face so much adversity because coming from where I'm coming from, I didn't have the resources, right? So what do they say? What are the expression, like, it's not the resources that hold you back. It's not the lack of resources, it's the lack of resourcefulness, right? And you'll hear that time and time again because it's true. Trust me. I thought that school would become a resource for me, and I thought that that's what I could base my all my experience off of. I thought I could base all of my my expertise and all that stuff. Is like, those weren't skills that I mean, they were skills that I developed. They weren't experiences, right? As far as hardcore experiences of being in the work, in the work world. And that's, that was one of the biggest confusions for me. Like when I left school, I thought I would be able to, like, with the little bit of information that I had gathered, right? I thought I would be able to, really compete, in the market that I chose. And when I left school, I wanted to do clothing, and I didn't realize, and this is another thing too, I learned a little bit of the business aspect of, what it's like to establish a business and, somewhat what it's like to run a business. I had a little bit of experience, in my prior life because I was a little bit of an entrepreneur myself. I had businesses, but they weren't branded or nothing like that. They were just, resell businesses. And, all through my youth, I would buy things and resell them. And I kind of got used to that. I kind of got used to the whole, and learning how to do the marketing side of it is learning how to read trends, right? And I did that. That's what I was doing in a very young age. I was learning to read trends, and I was capitalizing on the market. What was hot, supply and demand. I learned the very basic levels. When I went to school, I thought it was going to be simply those skills that merged with, my business management skills that I learned, or, the marketing skills that I learned. And it wasn't true at all, especially in this day and age where you have social media marketing, right? It's a little different. You have a lot more exposure. So although it's different, that's not to say that it's any harder, because it's actually a little easier to gain exposure, right? And I think that's where it could get a little overwhelming, because you don't know what platform is going to bring you the success that you're looking for, because each platform has its own, trends. Each platform has its own, modes of marketing, whether it's audio only, whether it's visual only, whether it's visual and audio as a combination, whether it's, a static, visuals, or whether it's, dynamic visual. So there's so many different things to get into. How do you know which one to choose? Right? That's why I'm doing things like this. Like, I'm making these videos and I'm putting them on YouTube and stuff like that now. Because, it's one of those discovery processes that I'm going through, and I'm trying to figure out. I've never done the YouTube stuff. I've been doing some live videos on, like Facebook, and I started to do like a Periscope, and it didn't jive with me. Same thing with the Snapchat, with the short videos and stuff like that, trying to brand myself with that. Also trying to do like an Instagram. Trying to have a blog presence with, different platforms like Reddit, or Tumblr was another one that I had started. Also WordPress was another one, as well, in combination with all that stuff, having, or Twitter, was another one, in combination with the Periscope and all that stuff. And what else? Oh, the website, right? Having a website, you know, and the website to me is like a merger of all of those things that you learn along the way, as far as the different aspects of marketing that you want to integrate into one place. Your website is that place. Your website is the place where you integrate all those pieces. And, you know, and timing, right? Timing is so important. Today's day, and, you know, I remember growing up watching commercials that were 30 seconds long. We would never. I mean, we watch Vine compilations that are 30 seconds long that are pretty damn satisfying now, right? But you get so many, from so many different perspectives. You get so many different, you know, forms of entertainment within a short period of time. Like, look at the advertisements on you know, on, say, for instance, YouTube, right? The advertisements are, you know, what are they? They try to capture you within the first 3 seconds, but then you have 5 seconds before you can skip a video, right? And then you have that video, like if you wanted to stay watching that video and it's entertaining enough, right? You have the option to sit there and watch it, and that could be anywhere from like 2 to like 5 minutes or whatever, right? And you know, that in itself is a form of entertainment, but you know, you need to be able to capture those people within the first like 3 seconds, right? Before, I remember learning in school that marketing was you have to capture them within the first 10 to 15 seconds. If you don't have them within the first 10 to 15 seconds, then they're definitely not going to know what's going on at the end of the commercial, which is only 30 seconds long, you know? So with that being said, you only have 3 seconds now, right? And you know, that makes it very difficult. So you have to be very entertaining, and you have to be very charismatic and energetic as you can be within that first 3 seconds, and start off with some lead-ins, some lead-ins that are really will capture the attention. You know, you start off with those things like, you know, like, oh, so I fell into the river. Right? You start off commercial. So I fell into the river. And then, you know, that's why you see a lot of these, you know, comedy commercials. They're working because, you know, it's like, oh, so I fell into the river and whatever. So you have like a couple of seconds there to register. Whoa, what happened in the river? Right? And whether or not that is going to be interesting to you or not, or whether it's going to be, I mean, humor is cross-platform. Humor, it works almost on every level, right? And that's the beauty of having those, you know, those funny commercials. That's why they work so well during, you know, Super Bowl. You know, when you have these Super Bowl commercials, people pay millions of dollars. You know, there's tons of market research that goes into those commercials. And why are they always funny? Because it's cross-platform. Like, a lot of people can relate to it. And comedy has many layers. You know, you have dry comedy, you have satire, you have, you know, slapstick, you have, you know, pantomime type of comedy. You have so many different, you know, ways to express yourself when it comes down to comedy, that of course it's cross-platform. So with that being said, you know, I try to integrate that. I try to integrate those silly little things like the expressions on the beginning of the thumbnails, or, you know, like little things like that, that I'm hoping that, you know, will work. But we'll see. It's going to be trial and error depending on the platform, right? I mean, it works. Like they say, what is it? Oh, geez, cars and, no, what's that? I heard somebody say something about butts and boobs or something like that. Those are the double, the double B's that always capture attention, because if it's not comedy, then sex sells, right? So me, I'm not really in the market to exploit, you know, body parts, I guess you can say, or sex in general. But you know what? One day I might test it out, just as part of, you know, the field work, you know, just to be able to have, you know, that experience of seeing, you know, how do people really gravitate towards that? And I'm pretty sure, you know, they say it's the easiest thing. Now, with anything that you invest time and money into, right, you're gonna have to have, you know, benefits, but there's gonna be benefits, but there's also gonna be some drawbacks to that, right? What happens when you start selling sex, right? And no pun intended, really, not physically. What I'm saying is visually, as a marketing tool, a marketing strategy. When you start selling sex, right, you kind of pin yourself into a very broad bracket. Like you paint with a broad brush. You're not capturing any one thing, right? You're not capturing any one interest. So the niche is out the door, right? You can't really call, you know, butts and boobs, you know, a niche, because it's really not. It's like, it's just one of those primal instincts that, you know, will capture your attention right away. But ultimately, in order to get into your niche, you're going to have to find out how to integrate, you know, that type of advertisement, that type of marketing strategy and tactic with something that is relative to your niche. That's why you see, like, say for instance, another way they do it is like the news broadcasters. You see a lot of these foreign companies, or foreign news broadcasters. They'll do like a very attractive woman who has, you know, their cleavage showing, with very big breasts and a very nice, you know, figure and body, and very pretty, very attractive, right? Ultimately, just very attractive. You know, talking about the weather. And it's kind of strange, but that's kind of the tactic to get you to stay. Nobody really cares to stay for the weather, right? So they're not going to watch the weather, and then they're, so what is it? What happens there as far as marketing? Well, what happens is your mind kind of tunes out from what you were interested in from the main news, right? And the weather is kind of something you kind of talk about as just like a cliche, you know, quick conversation that you might have with somebody. Oh, how's the weather today? Yada yada yada, right? So it's a boring thing. It's a boring subject. So what do? They make it more exciting by integrating boobs and butts. And you know, that it's kind of sad, but it does the trick, because we are primal creatures. We are humans, right? And we have a very primal way of processing information. And when information comes across to us as attractive as, you know, butts and boobs for men, you know, and I'm not going to say it's not attractive for women. Of course it is too, right? But it just goes to show that, you know, those tactics, they're not for a niche market, but you can integrate them if you're trying, you know, desperately to get attention. Then by all means, you know, you got to do what you got to do. I'm not there yet. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still need to grow my channel, I still need to grow my brand and all that stuff, but yeah, I don't know if I need that right now, right? I want to really grow it towards the niche. And the only way that I will exploit that or explore that is to kind of give you guys, as my community, you know, the eFlunky community, you know, a little bit of an insight as to how that works and how it's working out for me, right? And that'll be pretty exciting to find out. But ultimately, you know, this cross-platform stuff, it can get a little confusing, and you want to be able to capture attention as quick as possible. You know, yes, it does. Butts and boobs capture attention, you know, right away. Of course it does. You know, I'm not saying it captures all attention, but it is a cheap little tactic to get people interested. So you can post a picture, you know, as a thumbnail, right? For example, of somebody with you know, a very attractive person, you know, who, you know, especially like now, know your market, right? If you know your market, I'm not going to get here and really tell you guys, you know, specifics about what market, you know, I'm into, or the target audience and all that stuff. But ultimately what happens is, like, you can post something so simply as a thumbnail of an attractive person, you know, man or woman, doing something within that, you know, that what can I say, that environment, right? That work environment, that corporate environment, or that environment in general, right? So you post a thumbnail on your video or your advertisement or whatever with somebody that is an attractive person, right, in that environment, that work environment. And what does that do? That, you know, that lets you know that environment is attractive, that environment is welcoming, that environment has, you know, potential, you know, for whatever the cost or whatever. You know, it attracts you to that place and time, and it kind of creates that imagery, like, oh, what if I was in that environment? Could I be considered one of these attractive people? Could I, you know, in marketing companies and advertising in general, that's what they aim for. They aim towards the insecurities of others in order to help them build the confidence to feel like they match the standard, right? And that's all it is at the end of the day. You know, it's as shallow as that, but at the same time, you know, that's exactly what marketing is, right? You can't really argue against that. Marketing is nothing more than trying to get attention. And if the more attention you can get for your company, you know, the better it is for the bottom line, right? Ultimately. And that's really what it comes down to. Now, you know, I heard another thing too. I was actually reading an article on, I think it was LinkedIn or something, LinkedIn or Twitter. But I was reading an article that that said something as to the extent that that which is a Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio was talking about, you know, how, oh geez, I forget exactly what it was. I'm gonna have to reflect upon that. Anyway, you know, so the cross platform, you know, marketing and branding and all that stuff, yeah, it can get a little complex, and I hate to, you know, I tried to chunk it out here in this video, and it's not working out at all. I don't have any specific examples, and you know, trust me, it's one thing that it's a work in progress, right? So my mission is to try to figure out how that works, you know, and what to expect. That way I know how to allocate resources to bring to you guys, and let you know what's working, what's not working, right? Now I'm going to try to go behind the scenes as well and try to get some analytics and see, you know, if I can get some real figures. That way I could, you know, give you guys more specific information to go by. You know, now understand that when it comes down to marketing and branding, it's all about timing, right? So the timing and the time frames, they matter a lot, because you know, you have certain times of the day, you have certain times of the week, certain times of the month, you have certain months that do better, you have certain, you know, years that do better. And with that being said, always take that into consideration when you're planning to do any kind of marketing or branding for yourself, right? So with that being said, I think I'll do my sign off here. But that's pretty much it. So my mission is to try to figure out, and I'm going to start, I did start the video talking about, you know, Snapchat and where it's going to fit in this marketing scheme. But I think it has more to do with, with branding your personal, you know, Snapchat really has to do with your personal brand. So look forward to Snapchat really, you know, emphasizing, you know, personal videos and personal, you know, blogs and things to enhance your own personal expressions and stuff like that. Again, they already have the filters and all that stuff, so it's a very personalized thing, as far as sharing your experiences with the world. Now, how are they going to enter the market with that? I don't know, and I don't think it's really set up for that. But you know, I haven't really looked into it, so that's another thing that, you know, is part of the checklist. But ultimately, you know, Instagram and things like, you know, YouTube and the other platforms that I had mentioned previously in this video, you know, they do have their place and time right now. Now, we don't know, you know, as far as how the market is going to, you know, we don't know if the market, if those media platforms are going to be oversaturated with marketing, or whatever the case is, and maybe people might actually appreciate Snapchat for that, and it'll be a relief, and then you'll start seeing a lot more, you know, advertising and marketing, you know, coming through Snapchat. But for now, I think it's a little easier to do, you know, Instagram and Facebook. Well, not Facebook. Facebook is kind of another one of, you know, one of those fish, right? But Facebook in itself, you know, you can still do some marketing and stuff like that. The only thing about the Facebook community is it's somewhat of a closed community if you're trying to market on your own. Now, you do have to pay for advertisements and stuff like that to help you reach a broader market. But the only thing I didn't like, and I still am kind of like not crazy about Facebook, it's a good starting platform. That's how I started. I started doing my live videos, and I started doing, you know, my marketing and stuff like that, just to get people within my area where I'm from, and, you know, the city where I live and all that stuff, you know, to kind of get them familiar with my brand and kind of seeing it, and the, you know, the exposure and all that stuff. It's a good platform to get started, because there's not going to be as much critique, I guess you can say, but that goes on both sides. That's good critique and negative, positive critique and negative critique, right? And how people accept it is kind of, it's not as I don't know. The one thing I discovered is not as accepting if you're trying to market all on your own. It is very difficult, because you have to reach people on a one-to-one, and that takes a lot of time and energy. So if you want to use Facebook as a platform to advertise, I mean, there are plenty of people who do very well, you know, and it's part of their, you know, their advertising campaign it does include, you know, Facebook as a pretty good market. Now, there are different avenues that you can go, and it takes a lot of hard work to reach those, you know, those avenues. You know, you have groups, and groups are a great way to really establish your niche in the Facebook community and have people sharing and talking about it. But I think ultimately you have to be able to integrate all of the platforms. Now, so much for the sign off, right? But you have to be able to integrate all the platforms in order to really establish a footing and getting, you know, where you want to go as far as your marketing campaign and all that stuff. But you also have to have a plan, right? I mean, you can't just go and throw yourself into the marketing world and then not have a plan for what you want returned, right? So there are different tools also to help you measure, you know, measure the, you know, all the analytics, like you can do Google Analytics. I seen another one that was called like a Bitly that helps you track, you know, certain things. And also, what was another one? I forget. Oh, geez, I forgot. Anyway, brain fart. So there are different ways to measure, and you want to be able to plan for that measurement, because it's those little things, right? Those little things that you can measure, that you can, you know, try to repeat if you're having a certain, you know, form of success with a certain, you know, imagery or a certain wording or a certain, you know, type of marketing tactic. Then you're going to want to be able to repeat that. You know, now you don't want to repeat it every single time. Same thing with like hashtags, right? Like eventually they'll kind of get worn out. So you kind of want to replace, you know, a lot of the older ones. Like, yeah, cycle through them, recycle them, and do what you can. But ultimately, I think you're gonna have to be able to create new ones. You know, especially because you're always gonna have something new going on. You're always gonna have some kind of new promotion, some kind of new, you know, some kind of new, you know, event, or, you know, strategy, or whatever it is that you do as part of your marketing thing. You want to be able to differentiate yourself with new hashtags and not go with all the boring ones. Now, all the boring ones, don't get me wrong, some of them, you know, they have quite a following, so you'll benefit a lot from, you know, from using some of those older ones, especially as a kickstand when you're first starting out. But ultimately, when you get into your niche and you really start developing yourself and discovering more about, you know, catchphrases and words and stuff like that attributed to your own little niche, then you'll start to find ways to those hashtags, people gravitate towards your marketing and your stuff. So with that said, I think I'm gonna leave you there. I felt like I had to revisit that Snapchat thing, because I'd mentioned at the beginning of the video, and I needed to emphasize, you know, the difference between them, and why I think, you know, those platforms, they are very different. You know, some of them are somewhat the same, but most of them are very different, and you have to approach them from a marketing standpoint very differently, because people take to the information very differently. So it is what it is. Anyway, I'm Alex. This is your Entrepreneur's Field Guide. And wait, let me retract that. This is your Entrepreneur's Field Report. I'm Alex with the Flunky Entrepreneur's Field Report, and peace out, people.